It was supposed to be a simple spring cleaning day. Nothing more, nothing less. Sarah had been putting off organizing her late mother's bedroom for months. The wardrobe stood there like a silent sentinel, filled with clothes that still carried the faint scent of her mother's perfume. But today was the day. No more excuses. "Come on, just get through this," she whispered to herself, pulling open the heavy wooden doors. The first few hours went smoothly. Folded sweaters, vintage dresses that told stories of decades past, shoes that had walked countless miles. Each item was a memory, but Sarah pushed through, sorting everything into neat piles: donate, keep, discard. It was when she reached the very back of the wardrobe that everything changed. Her fingers brushed against something unexpected. Not fabric, not wood. Something hard and rectangular, wedged so far back she almost missed it entirely. "What the hell?" Sarah muttered, pushing aside winter coats that hadn't seen daylight in years. There it was. A wooden box, maybe the size of a shoebox, wrapped tightly with faded brown string. Dust covered every surface so thick you could write your name in it. The wood was dark mahogany, scratched and worn, clearly decades old. Sarah's heart started beating faster. How had she never seen this before? She'd helped her mother organize this wardrobe dozens of times over the years. Yet here it was, hidden like some kind of secret. She called out to her husband Mike, who was downstairs watching TV. "Mike, can you come up here for a second?" The sound of footsteps on the stairs. "What's up, babe?" Mike appeared in the doorway, took one look at Sarah's face, and knew immediately something was different. "Look at this." Sarah held up the mysterious box. It was buried way back there, behind everything. Mike stepped closer, squinting at the ancient string binding. "Jesus, that thing looks old." "Really old." "Where do you think it came from?" "I have no idea. Mom never mentioned anything like this." Sarah turned the box over in her hands, feeling its weight. Whatever was inside wasn't light. Should we open it?" That's when the questions started flooding in. Why would her mother hide a box so deep in the wardrobe? What could be so important that it needed to be wrapped in string and buried behind decades of clothing? And more unsettling, why had her mother never mentioned it? Sarah's mother, Helen, had always been an open book. She shared stories about her childhood, her marriage, her dreams and disappointments. There were no family secrets, no hidden chapters in their family history. At least, that's what Sarah had always believed. "Maybe it's just old photos," Mike suggested, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. "Or documents, tax records from way back." But even as he said it, both of them knew this felt different. The way the box was hidden, the deliberate care taken to wrap it and push it so far back. This wasn't about organization or storage. This was about concealment. Sarah set the box on her mother's old dresser and just stared at it. The string was knotted in a complex pattern, clearly tied by someone who didn't want it to come undone easily. The knots were tight, withered, as if they'd been there for decades. "You know what's weird?" Sarah said, running her finger along the edge of the box. "Mom was always telling us to clean out our old stuff. Don't hang on to things you don't need, she'd say. But she kept this hidden away like some kind of treasure." Mike nodded slowly. "Or some kind of secret." The word hung in the air between them. Secret. It felt impossible. Helen Martinez had been the most transparent person either of them had ever known. She wore her heart on her sleeve, shared her thoughts freely, and had always encouraged honesty above all else. So what could possibly be in this box that she felt the need to hide? Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her sister Emma. "How's the cleaning going? Finding any good memories?" Sarah stared at the message, then at the box. Should she tell Emma about this discovery? Part of her wanted to wait, to see what was inside first. But another part of her, the part that remembered how close the three of them had always been, knew Emma deserved to know. She texted back, "Found something strange. A hidden box in Mom's wardrobe. Really old." The response came back almost immediately. "What? I'm coming over right now." 20 minutes later, Emma burst through the front door like a woman on a mission. She took the stairs two at a time and practically skidded into their mother's bedroom. "Show me," she demanded, slightly out of breath. Sarah pointed to the dresser. Emma's eyes widened as she took in the mysterious box, the ancient string, the thick layer of dust. "My God," Emma whispered. "How did we never see this?" "That's exactly what I said." Emma picked up the box, turning it over in her hands just as Sarah had done. "It's heavier than I expected. And look at these knots. Someone really didn't want this opened." "The question is," Mike said from the doorway, "do we have the right to open it?" Both sisters turned to stare at him. "I mean," he continued, Maybe there was a reason she kept it hidden. Maybe it was meant to stay that way. Sarah felt a flash of irritation. She's gone, Mike. And this is our house now. Whatever's in here, we have a right to know. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Did they have the right? What if the contents were meant to be private forever? What if opening this box would somehow violate their mother's trust, even in death? Emma sat down heavily on the bed. You know what I keep thinking about? That conversation we had with Mom a few weeks before she passed. Remember? She kept saying she had things to tell us, but there wasn't enough time. Sarah did remember. Their mother had seemed agitated those last few weeks, like there were words trapped inside her that she couldn't quite find a way to say. She kept looking at us like she was memorizing our faces, Emma continued. And she'd start sentences but never finish them. There are things you should know. When I was younger. But then she'd just trail off. I thought it was the medication, Sarah admitted, making her confused. But what if it wasn't? What if she was trying to tell us about this? Emma gestured to the box. The three of them stood in silence, staring at the mysterious object that had suddenly become the center of their universe. The afternoon sun slanted through the bedroom windows, casting long shadows across the room where Helen Martinez had spent her final months. There's something else, Sarah said quietly. Something I didn't tell you. Emma looked up sharply. What? A few days before Mom died, I found her in here crying. Just sitting on the edge of the bed, tears streaming down her face. When I asked what was wrong, she said she was worried about us. About what we'd think of her when she was gone. What did you tell her? That we'd always love her, no matter what. That nothing could change how we felt. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. But she just shook her head and said, you don't understand. You don't know everything. Emma reached out and squeezed her sister's hand. Maybe this is what she meant. Mike cleared his throat. Whatever's in there, you two need to decide together. I'll support whatever you choose. Sarah looked at her sister. Emma looked back. In that moment, they were children again, facing a decision that felt bigger than they were. If we open it, Sarah said slowly, there's no going back. Whatever we find, we'll have to live with it. And if we don't open it, Emma replied, we'll spend the rest of our lives wondering what Mom was trying to tell us. Wondering what she thought would change how we see her. The box sat there between them, silent and mysterious. Waiting. Sarah reached for the string, then stopped. Are you sure about this? Emma nodded firmly. She was our mother. We loved her, and she loved us. Whatever's in here, it doesn't change that. But as Sarah's fingers worked at the first knot, both sisters felt their hearts pounding. Because deep down, they both knew that some secrets, once revealed, have the power to change everything. The string began to loosen. The string fell away like old skin. Sarah's hands were shaking as she worked through the final knot. Beside her, Emma held her breath. Mike stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching his wife and sister-in-law confront whatever their mother had kept hidden for decades. Okay, Sarah whispered. Here we go. She lifted the wooden lid. The hinges creaked, a sound that seemed to echo through the entire house. And there, nestled inside the box like sleeping secrets, lay a collection of items that made no immediate sense. Letters. Dozens of them, tied with a faded red ribbon. Photographs, black and white and yellowed with age. A small velvet jewelry box. And underneath it all, what looked like official documents, certificates, forms, papers with official seals. Emma leaned forward, squinting. What is all this? Sarah carefully lifted the bundle of letters. The paper was thin, delicate, the kind that might crumble if handled too roughly. The handwriting on the envelopes was elegant, old-fashioned. And the return address. Mexico City, Sarah read aloud. These are from Mexico City. But Mom grew up in Texas, Emma said, confused. She always said her family came from Texas. Sarah untied the red ribbon. With the same care she might use to handle ancient artifacts. The first letter was dated 1967, the year before their mother married their father. It's in Spanish, Sarah said, unfolding the delicate paper. Emma moved closer. Her Spanish was better than Sarah's. She'd minored in it in college. She began to read, her voice soft and uncertain at first, then growing more troubled with each word. My dearest Elena, Emma translated, I hope this letter finds you well in your new life. I think of you every day and wonder if you ever think of our little Maria. She is growing so fast, and she has your eyes, your smile. Emma stopped reading abruptly. What? Sarah demanded. What does it say? Emma's face had gone pale. Sarah, this letter is talking about a baby. A little girl named Maria. The room went silent except for the ticking of their mother's old alarm clock. That's impossible, Sarah said firmly. Mom never had another child. We would have known. But even as she said it, pieces of a puzzle she didn't know existed began clicking into place. The way their mother sometimes went quiet when they talked about their childhood. The way she'd changed the subject when they asked about her life before marriage. The sadness that would sometimes cross her face when she saw mothers with young daughters. Emma picked up another letter, this one dated a year later. Her hands were trembling as she unfolded it. Elena, I received the money you sent for Maria's schooling. She is doing well, but she asks about you constantly. When will you visit? When can she meet her mother? Stop, Sarah said, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. Emma ignored her and reached for a third letter. Elena, Maria is now 5 years old. She made a drawing for you. I've enclosed it with this letter. She calls you Mama Elena. Even though she doesn't understand why you live so far away. Mike stepped forward from the doorway. Girls, maybe you should. No. Sarah's voice was stronger now, though her face was ashen. We need to know. She reached for the photographs. The first one showed a young woman who looked exactly like their mother. The same dark hair, the same gentle eyes, the same smile they remembered from their childhood. She was holding a baby, maybe 6 months old, and her face radiated pure love. The second photograph was dated on the back. Maria, age 3, 1970. It showed a little girl with pigtails, playing in what looked like a courtyard. She had their mother's features, unmistakably. The third photograph was a school picture. Maria, 1st grade, 1973. The same little girl, now missing her front teeth, grinning at the camera. Oh my God, Emma whispered. We have a sister. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just gone off. Sarah sank onto the bed, photographs scattered around her. This can't be real. Mom would have told us. She wouldn't have kept something like this secret. But the evidence was right there in front of them. Letters spanning decades. Photographs showing a little girl growing up far away. And at the bottom of the box, Sarah found what looked like official documents. What are those? Emma asked, pointing to the papers. Sarah unfolded them carefully. They were birth certificates, immigration documents, and what looked like legal papers, all in Spanish, all bearing official seals. I think. Sarah's voice caught in her throat. I think these are adoption papers. Mike stepped closer, looking over her shoulder. Adoption papers? It looks like Mom Elena gave up a baby for adoption in Mexico before she came to the United States. Before she met Dad. Emma sat down heavily beside her sister. But why keep it secret? Why never tell us we had a sister? Sarah continued digging through the documents. There were money transfer receipts, dozens of them, showing regular payments sent to Mexico City over the years. The amounts varied, sometimes $50, sometimes 100, but they were consistent, month after month, year after year. She was sending money, Sarah said, her voice barely audible. All these years, she was sending money to support her. At the very bottom of the document pile, Sarah found something that made her gasp out loud. What now? Emma demanded. Sarah held up a more recent letter, postmarked just 5 years earlier. The handwriting was different, younger, more modern. It's from Maria, Sarah said. Our sister. The word felt strange in her mouth. Emma took the letter and began to translate, her voice growing more emotional with each sentence. Dear Mother Elena, I am writing to tell you that I am now married and have children of my own. My daughter is named Elena, after you, though she has never met her grandmother. I know you have your reasons for staying away, but I want you to know that I have never stopped loving you or hoping that someday we could be a real family. Emma's voice broke completely. Sarah, there's more. Keep reading. I have saved every letter you ever sent, every photograph. My children know about their grandmother in America, the one who loves them but cannot visit. I tell them that love sometimes requires sacrifice, just as you sacrificed to give me a better life. Sarah was crying now, tears streaming down her face. As the full weight of their mother's secret became clear. She gave up a baby, Sarah whispered. She gave up her first child and sent her to live with family in Mexico so she could come to America and build a new life. But she never forgot her, Emma added, looking at the decades worth of letters and photographs. She never stopped being her mother. Mike sat down on the edge of the bed, looking overwhelmed. Girls, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. None of us did, Sarah said, wiping her eyes. But it explains so much. Remember how Mom always insisted we appreciate what we had? How she'd get emotional whenever we talked about family? And the way she'd light up around other people's babies? Emma added. I always thought she just loved children. Sarah picked up another photograph, this one more recent, showing a young woman who looked to be in her 30s, standing with two children. On the back, someone had written Maria with Elena and Diego, 2019. We have nieces and nephews, Emma said, staring at the photo. We have family we've never met. The implications were staggering. Their mother had lived with this secret for over 50 years. She had supported another daughter, worried about her, loved her from afar, while never saying a word to the daughters she raised. Sarah found one final letter at the bottom of the stack. This one was different. It was in their mother's handwriting, but it was addressed to them. To my dearest Sarah and Emma, she read aloud. If you are reading this, then you have found my secret, and I am gone. I pray you can forgive me for keeping this from you for so long. Emma moved closer, and they read the rest together, their mother's words reaching them from beyond the grave. When I was 19 years old, I fell in love with a man who could not marry me. When I found myself pregnant, my family was ashamed. They sent me away, and when Maria was born, they insisted she be raised by my aunt in Mexico City while I came to America to start over. The letter continued, explaining how their mother had worked multiple jobs to send money back to Mexico, how she had met their father and found love again, but had never found the courage to tell him about Maria. I was afraid, the letter read. Afraid that he would leave me. Afraid that you girls would think less of me. Afraid that the life I had built would crumble if the truth came out. So I kept Maria as my beautiful secret, loving her from afar, supporting her as best I could, while building a new family with you. Sarah's hands were shaking as she continued reading. Maria knows about you both. She has photographs of you, stories about your achievements, your dreams. In her heart, you are her sisters, even though you have never met. I had hoped to tell you before I died, to maybe arrange for you to meet, but I ran out of time and courage. The letter ended with an address in Mexico City and a simple plea. Please don't hate me for this. Love, always, your mother Elena. The room fell silent except for the sound of both sisters crying. Mike stood up and walked to the window, giving them space to process this revelation that had turned their understanding of their mother and themselves upside down. 50 years, Emma whispered. She kept this secret for 50 years. Sarah was staring at the photograph of Maria with her children. She looks like us. Like mom. Like family. What do we do now? Emma asked. It was the question that hung over everything. They had discovered they had a sister, nieces and nephews, an entire branch of their family tree they never knew existed. But their mother was gone, and with her, any chance of understanding the full story of her choices. Sarah looked at the address written in their mother's careful handwriting. Mexico City seemed both impossibly far away and suddenly, urgently important. I don't know, Sarah said honestly. But I know we can't pretend we never found this. The box that had seemed so mysterious an hour earlier now sat open between them, its secrets finally revealed. But instead of providing answers, it had opened up a dozen new questions. Why had their mother been so afraid to tell them the truth? What kind of woman was Maria? Did she hate them for the mother's love she'd had to share? And most pressing of all, did Maria even know their mother had died? Emma picked up the most recent letter from Maria, dated just 8 months before their mother's passing. She was still writing to her, Emma said. Right up until the end. Which means, Sarah said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow, Maria might not know mom is gone. The argument started 3 days later. Sarah had been carrying Maria's address in her wallet like a loaded gun, pulling it out at random moments just to stare at the foreign words that now held so much power over their lives. Emma had been researching flights to Mexico City, making lists of Spanish phrases, trying to figure out how you tell a stranger she's your sister and your mother is dead. They'd agreed to meet at Sarah's house Sunday evening to decide what to do next. That's when everything fell apart. Absolutely not, Mike said, setting his coffee cup down hard enough to rattle the table. You are not flying to Mexico to ambush some woman with this news. Sarah stared at her husband in disbelief. Ambush her? She's my sister. She's a stranger, Sarah. A complete stranger who shares some DNA with you. You don't know anything about her. I know she's family. Family? Mike laughed, but there was no humor in it. Family doesn't abandon their children and keep it secret for 50 years. The words hit Sarah like a slap. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Don't you dare judge our mother, she said, her voice dangerous and low. Emma, who had been sitting quietly at the kitchen table, surrounded by printed emails and travel websites, finally spoke up. Mike, You don't understand what it was like for women back then, especially immigrant women. She did what she had to do. Did she? Mike turned to face his sister-in-law. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she abandoned one daughter to play house with two others. Get out, Sarah said. What? I said get out. Get out of my kitchen, get out of my house, get out of my sight. Mike stared at his wife of 15 years, seeing something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Something hard and unforgiving. Sarah, I'm trying to protect you here. You're talking about disrupting this woman's entire life based on 50-year-old letters. What if she doesn't want to meet you? What if she blames you for the mother she never really had? Then that's a risk I'm willing to take. But what about us? What about our marriage? What about the life we've built here? What about it? You're talking about flying halfway around the world to chase ghosts. You're obsessing over a woman you've never met while ignoring the people who are actually in your life. Emma stood up slowly. I should go. No, Sarah said firmly. You stay. He leaves. Mike looked back and forth between the two sisters, these women who had become strangers to him in the space of 3 days. Ever since they'd opened that box, it was like they'd been possessed by something he couldn't understand. Fine, he said finally. But when this blows up in your face and it will, don't come crying to me. He grabbed his keys from the counter and walked out, leaving the two sisters alone with their mother's secrets and their mounting obsession with a woman named Maria. After the front door slammed, Sarah and Emma sat in silence for a long moment. He's scared, Emma said finally. He's being an ass. Maybe. But he's also not wrong about some things. Sarah whipped around to stare at her sister. Not you two. I'm not taking his side. But Sarah, we need to be honest about what we're doing here. What are we doing? Emma gestured to the papers spread across the table. Flight information, hotel bookings, contact information for private investigators in Mexico City. We're planning to fly to another country to track down a woman who might not want to be found. A woman whose mother is dead, and she doesn't know it yet. So we should just pretend we never found the box? Pretend we don't have a sister? I don't know what we should do. That's my point. Sarah slumped back into her chair, suddenly exhausted. I can't stop thinking about her, I can't sleep. I keep wondering what she looks like now, what her voice sounds like, whether she hates us. Why would she hate us? Because we got the mother she didn't. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then maybe that's what this is really about. What do you mean? Maybe we're not doing this for her. Maybe we're doing it for us. Because we feel guilty. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. Of course I feel guilty. Our mother had another daughter, and we never knew. We got everything: her attention, her love, her presence, while Maria got letters and money orders. But that wasn't our fault, Sarah. We were children. Doesn't matter. We still benefited from Mom's choice. We got the life Maria should have had. Emma reached across the table and took her sister's hand. Or maybe we all got exactly the lives we were supposed to have. You don't believe that? I don't know what I believe anymore. They sat in silence, both lost in thoughts that had been circling their minds for days. Finally, Emma spoke again. I found something else today. Sarah looked up. What kind of something? Emma pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a Facebook page. The profile picture showed a woman in her 50s with familiar dark eyes and their mother's smile. This is her, Emma said. Maria Elena Vasquez. She lives in Mexico City, just like the address Mom left us. She's married to a man named Carlos, and they have 2 children: Elena, who's 22, and Diego, who's 19. Sarah stared at the screen, scrolling through photos of a life she'd never been part of. Birthday parties, family vacations, graduation pictures. A whole world that existed parallel to theirs. Look at this, Emma said, stopping on one particular photo. It showed Maria at what appeared to be a Mother's Day celebration, surrounded by flowers and gifts. The caption, translated by Facebook, read: grateful for the mother who raised me and the mother who loved me from afar. She knows, Sarah whispered. Knows what? She knows Mom is gone. Look at the date on this post. It's from 2 months after Mom died. Emma looked closer and felt her heart sink. Sarah was right. The post was written in past tense. Which means, Sarah continued, she knew Mom died, and she didn't try to contact us. The implications hit them both at the same time. Maria had known about their mother's death, maybe through relatives, maybe through the sudden silence when the letters stopped coming. But she hadn't reached out to her American sisters. She hadn't tried to find them. Maybe she doesn't know we exist, Emma said hopefully. But even as she said it, they both remembered their mother's letter. Maria knows about you both. She has photographs of you, Stories about your achievements, your dreams. She knows, Sarah said flatly. She knows we exist, and she doesn't want to meet us. Emma stared at the Facebook page, at the photos of a woman who shared their DNA but not their lives. So what do we do now? Before Sarah could answer, her phone rang. Mike's name appeared on the screen. I'm not answering that, she said. Sarah, you have to talk to him eventually. No, I don't. Not until he apologizes for what he said about Mom. Emma sighed. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen. What? This whole thing is tearing your family apart. Mike loves you, Sarah. He's just trying to understand why you're willing to risk everything for a woman who clearly doesn't want a relationship with us. How do you know what she wants? Because if she wanted to find us, she would have. It is not like we're hiding. Our names are in Mom's obituary, which is online. Our addresses are public record. If Maria wanted sisters, she could have had sisters. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Emma was right, and she hated her for being right. So that's it? Sarah asked. We just pretend we never found the box? We go back to our lives and forget we have a sister in Mexico? I don't know. Maybe we start smaller. Maybe we write a letter. A letter saying what? Hi, we're the sisters you never wanted to meet, and by the way, the mother you loved is dead? Emma flinched. When you put it like that, that's exactly what it is. We'd be forcing ourselves into her life when she's made it clear she doesn't want us in it. Sarah's phone rang again. Mike, again. This time she answered. What? Sarah, please come home. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. There's everything to talk about. This thing is destroying us. Sarah looked at Emma, who was still staring at Maria's Facebook page, scrolling through years of memories they'd never been part of. You're right, Sarah said into the phone. It is destroying us. But not for the reasons you think. What do you mean? I mean, we found out we have a sister who doesn't want anything to do with us. We found out our mother lived with a secret that probably ate at her every day for 50 years. We found out that love sometimes means giving up the people you care about most. Mike was quiet for a moment. Then so what happens now? Sarah looked around her mother's kitchen, at the table covered with evidence of a life they'd never been part of, at her sister's tear-stained face. Now we figure out how to live with what we know. But even as she said it, Sarah wasn't sure that was possible. Because some truths, once revealed, change everything. And some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Emma looked up from her phone. Sarah. What? Look at this. Emma turned her phone around to show a new post on Maria's Facebook page, uploaded just minutes earlier. It was a photo of an envelope addressed in their mother's handwriting, postmarked just before her death. The caption read, "The last letter from my mother Elena arrived today." In it, she tells me about my sisters in America and gives me their names and address. She says she's dying and wants us to meet before it's too late. But this letter took 3 months to reach me, and I'm afraid it's already too late. Sarah and Emma stared at each other across the table, both understanding the same thing at the same time. Maria didn't know they'd found the box. Maria thought they had no idea she existed. And Maria was waiting for them to make the first move. The letter had been there all along. Sarah found it the next morning, stuck to the very bottom of the wooden box with what looked like decades-old tape. She'd been about to put everything back, to close the lid on their mother's secrets and try to pretend the last week had never happened. But something made her run her fingers along the bottom one more time. The envelope was different from the others, smaller, thicker, with "For my American daughters" written across the front in their mother's careful handwriting. Emma was already on her way over. After discovering Maria's Facebook post the night before, they'd stayed up until 3 a.m. crafting and recrafting an email they were too scared to send. An email that began, "Dear Maria, you don't know us, but we're your sisters," and somehow never got any easier to write no matter how many times they tried. But now, holding this final letter, Sarah felt like maybe their mother had known this moment would come. Maybe she'd prepared for it. When Emma arrived, she found Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, the unopened letter in front of her like a prayer she was afraid to say out loud. "Is that the last one?" "I found it taped to the bottom of the box." Emma sat down carefully, as if sudden movements might make the letter disappear. "Should we wait for Mike?" Sarah shook her head. "He thinks this whole thing is crazy." "Let him think that." But even as she said it, Sarah felt the absence of her husband like a physical ache. They'd barely spoken since their fight, and when they did, it was about practical things: who would pick up groceries, whether the dishwasher was running properly. The careful politeness of two people who loved each other but couldn't find their way back to the same page. Emma reached across the table and squeezed her sister's hand. "Whatever this says, we'll deal with it together." Sarah nodded and carefully opened the envelope. The letter was longer than the others, written on both sides of 2 sheets of paper. Their mother's handwriting was shakier here, as if she'd written it near the end, when her hands weren't as steady as they used to be. "Read it out loud," Emma said. Sarah cleared her throat and began. "My dearest Sarah and Emma, if you are reading this, then you have found not just my secret, but also my greatest regret and my deepest love. I know you must have questions. I know you must be angry, confused, maybe even disgusted with me. I have carried this secret for 53 years, and every day it has been both a burden and a blessing. When I gave birth to Maria in 1968, I was 19 years old and alone in a world that had no patience for unwed mothers. Her father was married to someone else, and his family made it clear that acknowledging Maria would destroy them all. My own family was ashamed. They sent me away when I started showing, and when Maria was born, they gave me a choice: give her up for adoption to strangers, or let my Aunt Rosa raise her while I came to America to build a life that could someday support us both. I chose my Aunt Rosa. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I would work hard, save money, and bring Maria to America when I was established. I told myself that love meant sacrifice, and that the best thing I could do for my daughter was to give her stability while I built a future for us both. But life doesn't always follow the plans we make. I met your father 6 months after arriving in Texas. He was kind and patient and everything I had never dared to hope for. When he proposed, I knew I should tell him about Maria. I knew I should explain that I already had a daughter, that my heart was already divided. But I was afraid. I was afraid he would leave me. I was afraid that the respectable life I was building would crumble. I was afraid that admitting to Maria would make me unmarriable, unemployable, unwanted. So I said nothing. And then you, Sarah, were born, and you were so perfect, so beautiful, that I convinced myself I could love you both equally even if differently. I told myself that sending money to Mexico, writing letters, staying connected from afar was enough. I told myself that Maria was better off with Rosa, who could give her the attention and presence that I, working 3 jobs to support 2 families, could not. When Emma came along 2 years later, my family felt complete in ways I hadn't expected. But it also felt like a betrayal. Every milestone you girls reached, first steps, first words, first days of school, I celebrated with joy and mourned with guilt. Because somewhere in Mexico City, Maria was reaching those same milestones, and I was missing them. Your father never knew. How could I tell him that while he was changing diapers and reading bedtime stories to his daughters, I was sending money to support another daughter he'd never met? How could I explain that my heart lived in 2 countries, in 2 families, in 2 completely different worlds? I told myself the secret was protecting everyone. I was protecting your father from a truth that might hurt him. I was protecting you girls from a complicated family situation. I was protecting Maria from the disappointment of a mother who couldn't be there. But secrets don't protect anyone. They just create different kinds of pain. Maria grew up knowing she had a mother in America who loved her but couldn't come home. You girls grew up knowing you had a mother who sometimes seemed sad for reasons you couldn't understand. Your father lived with a wife who kept part of herself locked away. And I lived with the constant ache of being 2 different people. To you, I was Elena Martinez, devoted wife and mother, American immigrant success story. To Maria, I was Elena Vasquez, the mother who loved her enough to let her go but never enough to come back. The truth is, I was both and neither. As I write this, I know my time is running short. The doctors have given me months, maybe weeks. And I find myself thinking not about the life I'm leaving behind, but about the connections I never made. Maria is 55 years old now. She's married to a good man named Carlos, and they have 2 children, your nephew Diego and your niece Elena, who is named after me. Maria works as a teacher, just like I always hoped she would. She has sent me pictures of her family, stories of her life, updates about her dreams and disappointments. She knows about both of you. I have told her everything about your achievements, your careers, your marriages, your struggles. In her letters, she calls you mis hermanas americanas, my American sisters. She has never expressed anger about the life I chose to live with you instead of her. Instead, she has expressed curiosity, affection, and a desire to someday meet the daughters who got to keep the mother she had to share. This is what I want you to understand. Maria doesn't resent you. She understands, perhaps better than anyone, that love sometimes requires impossible choices. She understands that I didn't abandon her. I trusted her to my sister Rosa while I tried to build a bridge between two worlds. But I ran out of time to build that bridge myself. So I'm asking you to build it for me. I'm asking you to reach out to your sister because that's what she is, your sister, as surely as you are sisters to each other. I'm asking you to forgive me for keeping her from you and you from her. I'm asking you to understand that every choice I made was made with love, even when those choices caused pain. Maria's address is written at the end of this letter. So is her email address and phone number. I have written to her as well, telling her that you now know about her and that you might, I hope, want to meet. But I want you to know that whatever you decide, I am proud of the women you have become. You have grown into everything I hoped for and more. You are kind, strong, intelligent, and capable of love that transcends borders and languages and complicated family histories. You are my daughters, both of you. And Maria is my daughter too. That doesn't make any of you less precious to me. It just makes my love bigger than I ever imagined it could be. If you decide to contact Maria, please tell her that I never stopped loving her. Tell her that not a day passed that I didn't think of her, worry about her, pray for her happiness. Tell her that the hardest thing I ever did was leave Mexico without her, and that the most beautiful thing I ever did was trust that she would grow up to be exactly the remarkable woman she became. If you decide not to contact her, I will understand. This secret has been mine to carry, and I have no right to make it yours as well. But I hope with everything I have left that you will choose love over fear. I hope you will choose connection over comfort. I hope you will choose to be the sisters I never gave you the chance to be. At the bottom of this box, under this letter, you will find one final thing. It is a photograph of all three of you, taken without any of you knowing. Maria sent it to me last Christmas. It's a picture she took of a photograph I sent her years ago of you, Sarah, at your college graduation, with you, Emma, standing beside her. She had it printed and framed, and she took a picture of herself holding it. Three sisters, finally together, even if only in a photograph. This is my final wish, that someday, you won't need a photograph to be together. I love you all more than words can express. I'm sorry for the pain my choices have caused. I'm grateful for the love you've given me despite my imperfections. Take care of each other. And if you're brave enough, take care of Maria too. All my love, your mother, Elena. The kitchen was completely silent except for the sound of both sisters crying. Sarah set the letter down with trembling hands and reached into the box one final time. There, exactly as their mother had promised, was a photograph. It showed Maria, older now but unmistakably their sister, holding a framed picture of Sarah and Emma. She was smiling through tears, and written on the back in Spanish were the words "Para mis hermanas, con amor," for my sisters, with love. Emma picked up the photograph and traced Maria's face with her finger. She's beautiful. She looks like Mom. She looks like us. They sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing the weight of their mother's final words. The guilt, the explanation, the hope, the love, all of it wrapped up in a letter that had taken 53 years to write. "What do we do now?" Emma asked. Before Sarah could answer, they heard the front door open. Mike's voice called out tentatively, "Sarah? I brought coffee. And I owe you an apology." Sarah looked at her sister, then at the letter, then at the photograph of the sister she'd never met but had somehow loved her whole life without knowing it. "We write back," she said finally. "To Maria?" "To Maria." Mike appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding a tray of coffee cups and looking uncertain. When he saw the tears on both sisters' faces, his expression softened. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I was scared and I said things I didn't mean. Your mother was a good woman who made hard choices. I should have understood that." Sarah stood up and walked to her husband, wrapping her arms around him for the first time in days. "I'm sorry too," she whispered. "I almost lost sight of the family I have while chasing the family I never knew existed." Emma cleared her throat. "So, anyone know how to say we're your sisters? And we'd like to meet you in Spanish?" 3 weeks later, Sarah and Emma stood in the Mexico City airport, holding a sign that read Maria Elena Vasquez, and fighting the kind of nerves that make your hands shake and your stomach turn flips. They'd exchanged emails, shared photographs, and talked on the phone in a mixture of broken Spanish and broken English. They'd learned that Maria was indeed a teacher, that she loved gardening and cooking, that she'd been hoping to meet them for decades but had been afraid to make the first move. When Maria emerged from the crowd older than her photographs but with the same gentle eyes and familiar smile, all three sisters started crying before anyone said a word. The hug lasted 5 minutes. The conversation lasted 5 days. And when Sarah and Emma finally flew home, they carried with them not just memories of the sister they'd found, but an understanding of the mother they'd thought they knew completely. Love, they learned, is bigger than secrets. Family is stronger than fear. And sometimes the most beautiful gifts come from the most painful places. Mike picked them up at the airport and didn't ask any questions when both sisters cried the entire drive home. He just held Sarah's hand and let them process what they'd experienced. That night, as Sarah was unpacking, she found a note Maria had slipped into her suitcase. Thank you for choosing love over fear. Thank you for being the sisters I always dreamed of having. Thank you for understanding that our mother did the best she could with an impossible situation. I love you both. Until we meet again, Maria. Sarah smiled through her tears and added the note to the box of letters they decided to keep in a place of honor on the mantel. Not hidden away like a secret, but displayed like the treasure it had always been. The box that had once held pain now held only love. And sometimes, that's the most any family can hope for.